In this video, I'm going to discuss every single NFL team. I'm going to go over all the offseason moves which will be impacting best ball this coming year for the 2026 NFL season. Draft picks, free agent additions, offensive line rankings, and projected distribution, so you can have a better idea who you want to draft in best ball this year. And we can all put ourselves in the best possible position to take down that $3 million prize in the DraftKings Millionaire Contest this year. All right, we're going to kick this off with the AFC North. We're going to start out talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had the best record in the division last year at 10-7. Pittsburgh already had the third best rated offensive line, and then they went and took a big offensive tackle in the first round. Taking a look at the Steelers' picks. They took Max Iannacore, the big offensive tackle from Arizona State, in the first round. I think that's how you say his name. Maybe it's he anchor. I mean, that would be a better name for an offensive lineman if you ask me. He's the anchor of the offensive line. That's bad. I think it's Iannacore, though. So anyways, he's solid. They already had the third ranked offensive line in the league. They go ahead and add this guy. I have to think that was a little bit of an appeal to Aaron Rodgers. Like, come back for one more year, man. It's going to be fine. No one's going to hit you. It's all going to be good. Just come back to the Steelers. All right. So then in the second round, they took Jeremy Bernard out of Alabama. This guy is a big possession wide receiver. He's not the fastest guy, but he is a playmaker. I had him as my 7th ranked wide receiver pre-draft, and I do expect him to come in and make an impact right away, especially if Aaron Rodgers is in there. All right. Now, they also took Drew Aller, the quarterback out of Penn State, in the third round, and that could come into play later. More on that when we talk about their depth chart. We see no Aaron Rodgers on the Pittsburgh Steelers depth chart. What's up with that? No biggie, okay? I mean, of course, I don't think anyone's positive in the world, but, just like usual, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to wait until the last second right before the season to tell anyone if he's going to come back and play again. I do expect him to play, but if he doesn't, Mason Rudolph looks to be the starter, at least in the beginning part of the season, and Drew Aller, that nice third-round rookie quarterback they took out of Penn State, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play, I do expect Drew Aller to challenge for that quarterback position at some point during this first season for him, okay? Jaylen Warren and Rico Dowdle are both really nice picks in best ball. Jaylen Warren was there already. They added Rico Dowdle. They added him on a 2-year, $12 million and change deal, so he's making over $6 million a year. They do plan on using him. They do have the third best offensive line, and those guys are probably the safest picks in the Steelers offense when it comes to best ball for this year. And I say that because they have the third ranked offensive line. On top of that, they drafted a big offensive tackle, and the uncertainty at quarterback. I mean, if they're going to do anything, it's going to be run the ball. And you know what? Even if Aaron Rodgers is there, chances are they're not going to want to lean on him too much. They're still going to pound the rock as much as they can. They're going to really try to control the run game. The Steelers also brought in Michael Pittman on a real cheap deal. They traded basically a free trade. The Colts basically gave him away for a bag of balls, like a late round pick or something crazy like that. Michael Pittman was basically free. He slots in as their number 2 wide receiver, and he could be a weapon, especially if Aaron Rodgers is involved in this offense. If he's not, I'm not super excited about it, okay? Then at tight end, we have big Darnell Washington. I love me some Darnell Washington, but the thing is, I don't necessarily love him for best ball. He's just a little bit too inconsistent. In DFS, I love to take shots on this guy because he's always so low owned, and if he can score a touchdown, I mean, he might win you the week in DFS. But he's not going to do that so often, not nearly often enough to impact your best ball team. I wouldn't go drafting Darnell Washington at this point, okay? Now we're going to move right along to the next team in the division. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens were 8-9 last year. They did pretty well. John Harbaugh left to go to the Giants. Normally, when a team drafts an offensive lineman with their first-round pick, I think there's at least a chance that this will probably supply a boost and possibly improve the offensive line play, especially if that rookie happens to play the same position as their worst-rated offensive lineman from last year. However, in this case, the Ravens lost their best offensive lineman in Linderbaum, the center, and they drafted a guard in the first round, Awane. Now, a lot of people like Awane. They think he's going to be a really good player. But in this case, instead of possible improvement, they're going to have worse play at center, and they're plugging in a rookie to play left guard. I actually expect the Ravens' offensive line to take a slight step back from their 11th rated offensive line from last year. I think that they're still going to be pretty good, but they're going to slide back in the rankings just a little bit. Obviously, Henry and Lamar both remain a smash. Taking a look at the Baltimore Ravens depth chart here, Lamar Jackson and Henry are smashes, of course. Rashad Bateman is a decent player, and maybe I'll take a few shots on him, but really I want more Zay Flowers than Rashad Bateman. I might even like taking a few shots on Elijah Surratt over Rashad Bateman. Elijah Surratt, the rookie wide receiver out of Indiana. Okay. Then we have Mark Andrews, the tight end, who seems to be slowing down, but every year for the last few years, he has produced more than I expected him to, and I do think that that's going to continue at least one more year. There's going to be at least a solid amount of people who are expecting him to be washed up, but he's not. He's going to contribute. Isaiah Likely is gone. He is poised to have a really good year. Mark Andrews is probably my favorite stacking weapon with Lamar. Obviously, I want to get some Henry involved as well where I can. Some of these guys, Lamar, Derrick Henry, are really good weapons. Mark Andrews could be a very solid, low-level elite tight end. He used to be high-level elite tight end. I don't think he's got that in the tank anymore, but he is definitely a serviceable tight end. And, if you want to take him as your tight end 2 or maybe tight end 1 on certain teams I wouldn't hammer him too hard. I wouldn't go taking Mark Andrews in every draft or anything like that. Derrick Henry remains the very best ball player on this team, and we're just going to move right along. All right, next up we have the Cincinnati Bengals, 6-11 last year. I'm not sure exactly what's going on in Cincinnati. They may have blown it. They traded their top 10 pick away for Dexter Lawrence, which I guess they needed to do because their defense was horrible this year. They spent their second and third round picks on defense too. This doesn't help best ball at all. So next up, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals were 6-11 last year. I'm not sure exactly what's going on in Cincinnati. They might have blown it. Okay, they traded away their top 10 pick for Dexter Lawrence. They spent their next couple picks on defense too. They're really focusing on defense. Here's the thing, for best ball, not only does defense not matter at all, but for the Cincinnati weapons, we like the fact that their defense is horrible, okay? Their defense is horrible. They're always playing from behind. That makes Burrow have to be in all these shootouts and put up a lot of passing yards, a lot of passing touchdowns, and have a lot of passing attempts. If their defense gets better, that only hurts the offense as far as best ball is concerned. So taking a quick peek at their depth chart, we got Zach Taylor as the head coach. Joe Burrow now. Joe Burrow is a known commodity. He's going to be a good play in best ball, of course, like always. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Chase Brown is also a really solid pick. If that defense were to improve in Baltimore, Chase Brown would probably be the biggest beneficiary as far as best ball is concerned. He's already really good, but if the Bengals could be playing from the lead a little bit, he could have even better numbers. Jamar Chase is a smash, of course, and he's the guy that you want to be trying to stack up with Burrow as much as possible if you can. The thing is, you're going to have to take Chase in the first round if you're trying to go after Joe Burrow. I don't think there's anything wrong with having Chase and no Burrow. That is a possible thing. Most people, once they grab Chase, they want to try to chase after Burrow, and then they end up taking him a little bit ahead of ADP, and it kind of screws over the rest of their team just a little bit. Go ahead and take Chase wherever you want, and then if you can get good value on Burrow, take him as well. And then if you already have that stack started, then maybe build it up just a little bit more. But I wouldn't go chasing down Joe Burrow just because you got Chase. At least not every single time. Sometimes, and then especially when you can get good value, when this guy falls past ADP at all, or even just a couple of spots ahead of ADP. T. Higgins is also a really good wide receiver. We all know that. You don't need me to tell you that. He's gonna get his share of the offense, barring injury. Drew Sample is also a nice little tight end. But the best weapons, Chase, Brown, and Burrow. Those are the guys you want. I wouldn't go crazy taking any other players, but do as you please. If they're playing from behind a lot, Joe Burrow is going to be right up there. He's going to be right up there with the top best ball quarterbacks. And I really don't expect their defense to be that much better. Dexter Lawrence coming in, sure, that's fine. You want to spend your first couple picks on defense? Sure, that's fine. The Bengals' defense was really bad, and it's probably still going to be really bad. All right. Last but not least, in the AFC North, we have the Cleveland Browns, who finished at 5-12 last year. Now, the Browns had an incredible draft. They had the worst O-line ranking in the league last year. Dead last, 32nd. That being said, Their worst rated offensive lineman from last year is gone. They already picked up a couple veterans in free agency. And Zion Johnson, their new $49.5 million guard, formerly from the Chargers, is going to help out a little bit as well. They also brought in Elgin Jenkins, the center who played in Green Bay on a 2-year, $24 million year. They expect these guys to all chip in right away and make some major improvements on that offensive line. All right, let's check out this draft. This was a masterclass by the Browns, okay? They took the first tackle off the board with the 9th overall pick. Then, later on in the first round, they took Casey Concepcion, one of my favorite wide receivers in the whole draft. And then, just a few picks later, with the 7th pick in the second round, they took Denzel Boston, who I actually like even more than Casey Concepcion. Denzel Boston is going to be an incredible weapon in this league. I mean, Denzel Boston has it all. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the body control, he can catch. Denzel Boston is a stud. Shedeur Sanders is going to love having Denzel Boston around to throw to. Now we take a quick peek at their depth chart. Shedeur Sanders right now looks to be penciled in as the starting quarterback. I don't think it's set in stone. There is a chance that Deshaun Watson could compete. I think, at least that's what people are saying, but he hasn't even played in a couple years. I don't think that's a real threat to Shedeur Sanders. I think the bigger threat to Shedeur Sanders is actually Taylor Green, who is a rookie out of Arkansas, and he's probably not going to get a chance right away, but I do think that this guy is going to prove his worth, and within a year or two, he will be competing with Shedeur Sanders for that starting position in Cleveland. You heard it here first. I'm telling you, Taylor Green was one of my absolute favorite quarterbacks in this draft. I knew he was a sleeper. I knew he wasn't going to go until later on. I knew he was a little bit of a developmental project. But here's the thing. This guy has all the tools in his toolbox. He can throw. Maybe he's a little inconsistent, but that's the kind of thing that coaching can fix, right? He's got crazy athleticism. This guy can throw the ball from crazy, weird angles, and he can run, and he can jump. He's really like the prototype future NFL robot quarterback. All right, no one's talking about him right now, but keep your eye on him. He might be a year or two away. I wouldn't go taking him in best ball drafts right now or anything. An injury to Shedeur Sanders, and this guy might step in though. That very, very low-owned quarterback that nobody has, who could have. I don't know if he's got that spike week potential in him just yet. He might just need a little bit more developing, but it is very possible. We could see like some Cam Newton style rushing upside from this guy. The type of guy that you just can't stop on the goal line. It's again, I'm not taking him yet, not right away, because not exactly the next man up at this point, but he is someone to keep your eye on. I just want to point that out. Now the Browns do have a good offensive line, all right? I already told you about all those improvements that they made. They were really crappy before. So the work they did on the offensive line should also help supply a nice boost for Judkins and Sampson, who look to split carries and likely both be productive backs for best ball this year. I wouldn't be scared to take those guys just because they're on the Browns. They'll probably both end up being undervalued ADP-wise, and I think you should nab them up when it's going to fit the team that you're building. At the end of the first and the beginning of the second round, the Browns took not one, but two of the best wide receivers in this class. That's going to help Shedeur Sanders so much. Pre-draft, I had my eye on both of those guys, wondering where they were going to end up, just hoping they'd end up in good fantasy situations. I would have never predicted them being on the same team. These guys had first-round grades by consensus for a reason. KC projects as an amazing slot wide receiver. Drops were an issue in college, but his playmaking ability cannot be ignored. But the thing is, between the drops and the fact that they also took Denzel Boston, who I think he has just a little bit more heart, a little bit more fight, I think Denzel Boston actually projects to be more of a producer in these guys' rookie year. Also have Harold Fannin at tight end, who was an awesome tight end. I want a little bit of exposure to him. Let's talk about Cleveland's quarterback situation. I know they're talking about it like it's a competition over there, but right now I think it's Shedeur Sanders' job to lose. I think he's better than Watson and Gabriel at this stage of their careers. However, like I said, I don't think Sanders is definitely the long-term answer in Cleveland. I think he needs to watch out. Taylor Green is right on his coattails. I really like what Cleveland did this offseason, especially in the draft. And I think that a lot of these Cleveland Brown weapons are going to be viable for best ball this year. I think a lot of other people are going to be scared to take them just because they're on the Browns. They're scared that their offense isn't going to produce. But at least a few of these guys are going to produce, and they're going to produce in a real nice way in the game. What to say about the Bears? The Bears already have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They brought in a second-round center, I assume for depth purposes, but I expect them to remain one of the best units around the league. The Bears building right away. The Bears building the right way went defense and offensive line in their first 2 rounds. Great starts. The tight end they took in the 3rd and the wide receiver they took in the 4th are both completely buried on the depth chart. I'm not even sure why they took these guys. But the thing is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Bears already have tons of weapons I want exposure to in best ball this year. Let's take a peek at their depth chart. I love Caleb Williams, okay? DeAndre Swift is a solid running back, and Monangai is solid as well. These guys do have a good offensive line, so they're both valid. They might go a little bit high in best ball drafts for me to really love them that much on the Bears, and I expect to smash this year for best ball in 2026 are Luther Burden and Rome Odunze in that order, okay? I like Burden more than Odunze. I know that Odunze might be, that's fine. I just think that Luther Burden has a lot more upside, and he's just going to burn dudes on deep routes and hopefully score more touchdowns this year. Now, Rome is still a valid play, and if you want to stack with Caleb, either one of these guys is a valid option. You could also think about Colston Loveland, the tight end, but you know what? Colston Loveland is being viewed as a low-end elite tight end, and I don't love that. He's getting drafted a little bit higher in drafts than I am comfortable with, but if you can get a good deal on him, he is definitely a solid player worth taking a look at as well. The Pack didn't have a first-round selection this year. They did get lucky when stud cornerback Brandon Cisse from South Carolina fell to them in the 2nd round. They also didn't really address their 27th ranked offensive line in free agency or in the draft. Taking a look at their depth chart, okay, they've got Jordan Love, who is a solid quarterback, I guess, but their offensive line makes things a little bit harder on him than things really should be. Josh Jacobs, the same thing applies. This guy is a stud running back, but they just don't have a good enough offensive line, so all these guys are being held back just a little bit. Christian Watson is a pretty good wide receiver to take some shots on. Jaden Reed, I don't like quite as much. Matthew Golden now, this guy's poised to maybe step up and have a big second year. He is like their lottery ticket, I should say. I think that the Packers are going to take a step back unless Matthew Golden can step up and turn into a superstar in his second year. If this guy can go out there and have a big game most weeks and really dominate the field, that has to be what the Packers are hoping for, because otherwise I really do not know what they're thinking. Tucker Kraft now, I like Tucker Kraft a lot. Tucker Kraft is worth drafting on any team regardless of whether you have Jordan Love or not. If you do have Jordan Love, he's obviously a nice stacking partner. I don't love the stacks with Jordan Love here. Just the thing is, you just really don't know. A lot of these wide receivers, they're all going to contribute a little bit. No one's going to contribute a lot. So I don't really love anyone here. Maybe Tucker Kraft is probably the best weapon. Matthew Golden does have that chance to grow into a special wide receiver, and if that were to happen, he becomes a smash pick. But you know what? The chances of that aren't even that high. They're really not. I mean, I do think he takes a step up one way or the other, but is it enough of a step up to really change the outcome of games for the Packers and for your best ball season? Probably not. Okay, now let's switch focus to the Vikings. The Vikings focused on defense in this draft. It may have been a good draft for them defensively. I'm not here to talk about that. The Vikings had the 29th ranked offensive line last year, and they did not address it. They didn't address it in free agency. They didn't address it in the draft. They got themselves a depth caliber tackle at best with the compensatory pick in the 3rd round, basically a fourth rounder. So this guy isn't really going to contribute that much. In my opinion, the horrible offensive line and uncertainty at quarterback here with the 2 mediocre guys, all Vikings are considered undesirable for best ball. I'm going to have very low Jefferson exposure, and I'm really not taking many others. I'm really just staying away from Vikings for the most part this year. Okay, last but not least, in the division, we have the Lions. In the draft, the Lions wanted to shore up their offensive line, which ranked 16th in the NFL last year, so they took one of the top tackles in the class with the 17th pick. They switched focus to defense with the majority of their remaining picks. Now, let's take a quick peek at their depth chart. The Lions' best ball weapons remain about the same as last year with an adjustment to the running backs. Montgomery left to join the Texans, and the Lions brought in Isaiah Pacheco to take some of the workload off of Gibbs' shoulders. I'm not sure at this point in Pacheco's career if he has enough left in the tank to really contribute here. I don't expect much out of Pacheco. I don't expect as much out of Pacheco as they got from Montgomery, I think this is going to be really good for Gibbs early in the season, and he could see some huge weeks. I'm a little worried he'll start to break down later in the season and be less effective. In my original pre-draft rankings, I had Gibbs as my number 1 player overall. That partly had to do with the increased workload, but I also expected them to bring in another running back in the draft, and they didn't, all right? Gibbs is still a first-round guy, without a doubt. I am considering lowering him a little bit in my rankings. I'm not sure exactly how far. He's still definitely going to be in the first part of the first round, no matter what, okay? In my opinion, the other guys, Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Isaac Tesla, and Sam Laporta are all solid options who should produce similar numbers as they did last year. Okay, moving right along, we're going to look at the AFC East now. The New England Patriots, Super Bowl runners-up last year, had the best record in the division at 14-3. All right, the Pats were in the Super Bowl last year. They get some respect for that. Drake May is an ascending, good young quarterback. It's being reported that A.J. Brown will be traded to the Patriots at some time before the season. Once certain dates have passed and bonuses have been paid out or whatever the exact details are supposed to be there, it sounds like A.J. Brown is going to be Drake May's new wide receiver 1, and that could be really exciting. I'm hearing rumors that the Pats might give up their first rounder for Brown next year, their first rounder next year for Brown this year, I should say, and I do expect this trade to happen. I don't know exactly about the compensation. I don't know if the Eagles are really going to get that first round pick or not, but I do think that they're going to get as much as they can get from the Patriots for Brown, and Brown is going to play in New England. I definitely want to stack that pair up when I can. That's Drake May and A.J. Brown I'm talking about. And maybe I want to toss in Dobbs or Hunter Henry if I want to make it a double stack. The Patriots have a solid offensive line that should open up holes for both Stevenson and Henderson, who are both solid plays for best ball this year as well. Next up is the Bills. The Bills didn't have a first-round pick, and they spent both of their second-rounders trying to improve their defense, so that doesn't do much for best ball. They took an offensive tackle in the beginning of the 4th round, but I don't expect that to change much. The Bills already had a really solid offensive line last year, ranking as the 5th best offensive line in the NFL. I normally don't think a 4th-round wide receiver is going to make that much of an instant impact, but this looks to be the exception. The Bills grabbed Skylar Bell, the exciting wide receiver out of UConn. Bell can play outside or in the slot. He racked up over 100 catches and almost 1,300 yards last year alone at UConn. He has great hands and a lot of versatility. This might be one of the best possible landing spots for Skylar Bell. He instantly walks in as one of, if not the most talented wide receiver on the team. Of course, he will be competing with Coleman and Shakir for catches, but it's not like either of those guys have been Mr. Consistent in the past, okay? Skylar Bell looks to be the biggest change in the Bills' offense as far as best ball is concerned anyways. Of course, Josh Allen and James Cook remain total smashes. I will certainly be looking to build plenty of Bills double and triple stacks, including Josh Allen and numerous combinations of his weapons in the same lineup. It's very possible that Keon Coleman figures things out and takes a step up this year. I'm not super confident in this, and I won't go quite as heavy on Coleman as I did last year. If I remember right, Coleman had one huge spike week in the very beginning of the season last year and was mostly MIA after that. Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid are also very solid tight end options on the Bills, of course. DJ Moore, it is yet to be seen. I do expect him to come in and be their wide receiver 1. How productive is it going to be? I don't know. I have a feeling that he's not going to be quite so productive. I think that Skylar Bell might even have a better season than him. And I'm really having a hard time ranking DJ Moore and Keon Coleman and Shakir. All 3 of these guys are really good at times, but also kind of consistent. And I feel like Josh Allen is really going to split that ball up, make sure no one really feels like a superstar besides him and maybe James Cook, and he's just going to spread it out all over the place. I don't think anyone is an absolute smash, but I think all of the weapons on the Bills are viable, especially if you're going to stack them up with Josh Allen. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins were 7-10 last year. Okay, a little bit better than I expected them to even be. I mean, when I look back and think back at last season, I thought that they were even worse than that. They somehow squeaked out 7 wins. I'm really not expecting great things from the Dolphins this year. If there's a bright spot, they had the 10th ranked O-line last year, and they beefed up even more by adding Caden Proctor, one of this year's best tackles from Alabama, in the draft. That should be really nice for Achane and Ollie Gordon, who I think are... That should be really nice for both Achane and Ollie Gordon, who I think is going to get some goal line carries and pull enough weight to be your last best ball running back. I'm talking about Ollie Gordon, who is available at the end of best ball drafts. Most people think it's going to be the Achane show, but, you know, I have questions on whether he can stay healthy. Plus, I think they're going to give the ball to Ollie Gordon in goal line situations. I mean, he's just a bigger, stronger back. It just makes sense if they want to keep Achane fresh. The one good way to do that is to let Ollie Gordon take those real physical carries on 3rd and short and the goal line. Other than 2 running backs being taken at extreme opposite sides of the draft, I mean, you got to take Achane at the very top of the draft, and Ollie Gordon goes at the very end of the draft. I'm staying away from the Dolphins in best ball. I'm going to have very small exposure to most other guys. I just don't love the Dolphins. I think they're in for a really bad year. Last in the AFC East, we have the New York Jets, who were 3-14 last year. The Jets didn't give us any surprises at 2 overall in the draft, taking David Bailey, stud edge rusher from Texas Tech and Stanford. This does not impact best ball. Moving right along. With their second pick in the first round, the Jets took Kenyon Sadiq, the top tight end in this class. This was a bit surprising to me after they just took Mason Taylor in the second round last year. Pre-draft, I was super excited about Sadiq. He has all the tools you're looking for, and they are all top level. I thought he had the ability to be a top receiving tight end in the NFL right away, almost regardless of where he went to. Unfortunately, he went to a really bad spot. This landing spot is not optimal. The Jets' offensive line is below average at best, ranking 18 heading into the draft. They did not address this issue at all until they took a flyer on a guard in the 6th round. Not going to do anything, okay? Instead of addressing subpar offensive line and quarterback play, they went for way too many sexy picks instead of trying to build up that ass first, okay? There's a certain way you got to build your team. You can get as many exciting players as you want. If you don't have any time for blocks to develop, if you don't have any time for your quarterback in the pocket, he's just not going to be able to deliver the passes to the weapons, and the running backs aren't going to be able to hit the holes, and nothing's going to go the way you want it to go. This is a problem. The Jets had a really nice draft, but they didn't build the right way. The Jets also took Omar Cooper Jr., the stud wide receiver, at the end of the first round, and probably ruined his best ball value on us too. Okay? They did bring in Cade Klubnik, the four-year starting quarterback from Clemson, in the 4th round. I would be very surprised to see him beat out Geno Smith. He's just another average player, and the Jets just keep bringing him in, keep that bench warm. All right? The Jets still have Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Those 2 guys' value stays about the same from last year for the most part, although I expect a slight uptick from Braylon Allen this year. As for wide receivers, they've got Garrett Wilson, who may benefit slightly from the addition of Cooper. They have Cooper Jr., the rookie, and basically nothing else. Garrett Wilson is certainly capable of some spike weeks, but unless Sadiq somehow outperforms expectations as a rookie on the low-level Jets, Wilson remains my favorite guy to snag up in best ball drafts when he fits. I was down on Breece Hall last year, and I'm down on him again. He has to fall significantly below ADP before I even consider taking him. I won't be making many Geno Smith Jet stacks this year for best ball. I just won't. Okay, next up is the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles won a division last year with an 11-6 record. There's a lot to fuss about A.J. Brown leaving and likely going to the Patriots later this offseason. The Eagles obviously saw that coming. They have been working all offseason to bring in some new targets for Jalen Hurts. They used a couple of late round draft picks to trade for Dontavian Wicks from the Packers. They also brought in Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore during free agency. Then, during the draft, they landed Mekhi Lemon, the playmaking machine out of USC. He was one of my and most people's top wide receivers in this class. He projects to be a big contributor right away. He's already listed as slot wide receiver 1 in their depth chart right now. I think it's fair to say that losing A.J. Brown isn't going to hurt Hurts very much this year. He still has lots of weapons. I love Hurts in best ball. Okay, this year I want to stack him with Saquon and Lemon where I can. Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert are solid stacking options as well. Hollywood Brown and Dontavian Wicks probably aren't going to move the needle so much in best ball this year, but they might be decent sleepers to take a little bit later in hopes of a couple spike weeks, all right? The Eagles had the 14th ranked offensive line as far as ratings go last year. They didn't do much to change this one way or the other and look to remain middle of the pack, or just a little bit better maybe when it comes to O-line play. Saquon Barkley remains a smash, of course. Tank Bigsby I don't love quite as much right now. He could be one injury away though. A bunch of Eagles are definitely in play again this year for best ball. Next up, the Cowboys. The Cowboys were 7-9 last year. The Cowboys focused on defense in this draft, including when they took stud safety Caleb Downs with the 11th overall pick. I love Cowboys stacks in best ball this year. Dak is a great regular season quarterback, and regular season is exactly what you need to win best ball. If he has Lamb and Pickens available to him for the entire year, Dak could be in for a monster year statistically. The running game might be a little bit of a question mark, but I want Dak in best ball, and I want to stack him up with CD and George Pickens if I can. Jake Ferguson works well with those stacks too, especially if you're only able to get one of Lamb and or Pickens. Next up, we have the Washington Commanders, who were 5-12 last year. Not so great. The Commanders ranked 20th in offensive line play, and they did not address this in the offseason at all. It's hard for me to find something good to say here or even some players to recommend. I don't love Jaden Daniels. Will he be able to stay healthy this year? Even if he does, their weak O-line and lack of weapons outside of Terry McLaurin are going to make life really hard for Jaden this year. The Commanders are another one of those teams that I am kind of just avoiding for the most part in best ball unless I get extreme value later in the draft. Okay, now coming in last in the NFC East last year was the New York Football Giants at 4-13. Not very impressive, but the Giants brought in John Harbaugh this year to shift the direction of the team. The Giants were middle of the pack, ranked 15th in offensive line ratings last year. They have a young quarterback that they really like in Jackson Dart and are prioritizing protecting him. Giants spent the 10th overall pick on big offensive lineman from Miami, the second offensive lineman taken in this class. They're really prioritizing protecting Jackson Dart. The Giants also brought in the big 300-pound fullback, Patrick Ricard from the Ravens, who also looks to boost their protection schemes. Isaiah Likely, the playmaking tight end, also followed Harbaugh from the Ravens to the Giants. Dart's rookie campaign was impressive. Even more impressive if you consider how he did that with no Malik Neighbors around and hardly any weapons at all. Dart should have Neighbors this year, and the additional Likely should help him a lot. Fields, the wide receiver they took in the 3rd round out of Notre Dame, is a big target with great hands. His highlights jump off the screen at you, especially when you realize this guy was a 3rd round pick. I thought he was going to go in the 2nd round. He dropped down to the Giants in the 3rd. They actually traded up for this guy. Shows you that they like him and they plan on using him. I love that pick for the Giants. I think he's going to step right in and produce as a rookie. The Giants were lacking a big body wide receiver, and Fields is the perfect fit. I still expect the Giants to be in a lot of 2 tight end, 1 wide receiver sets, but this does shake things up a little bit now that they have Fields. Maybe they will be in 2 wide receiver sets a little bit more. I want plenty of Jackson Dart stacks. I want to stack them up with Neighbors, with Fields, with Likely, and Scatterboo the most, but I will be also working in some Tyrone Tracy and Theo Johnson in those stacks. Darius Slayton is a decent player who's probably worth taking a few shots on later in the draft, but I don't love him. I'm staying away from Darnell Mooney and Calvin Austin, a couple of guys the Giants brought in during free agency. I think the Giants are on an upswing, and some of these weapons for the Giants are going to be good in best ball this year. Now we're going to take a peek at the AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars won the division at 13-4. Listen, Trev is a solid-ish quarterback too. He did come through and put up good numbers during the best ball playoffs last year. His stats were inflated when he threw 5 touchdowns in a game against the Jets after they traded away a few of their defensive players last year. That was nice to have in week 15 if you were in the best ball playoffs. He did not have such a good season. I mean, he had a decent season, but not as good as he should have had. BTJ was better with Mac Jones throwing the ball. The Jags tied for the 26th worst rated offensive line, and they did not address it in free agency or the draft. I don't know if the Jags are about to take a step back, but I sure don't think they're taking a step forward. I never completely fade any team in best ball, and these guys are better than a couple of the other teams that I already said I'm fading, but I'm really not excited about taking many Jags this year. BTJ at value, that's really about it for me. Next up, we have the Houston Texans, who slightly surprised last year with a 12-5 record. Houston had the 24th ranked offensive line last year. They did take a first-round guard to try to improve here, and they also brought in a couple of solid offensive linemen in free agency. Hopefully, their offensive line play will be significantly better this year, allowing C.J. Stroud to look a little bit more like he did in his rookie season. If that O-line can play better and Nico Collins is available for the entire year, I think C.J. Stroud could put himself back in the conversation. Collins is a great pick regardless, but I will be looking to stack him with C.J. Stroud at least some of the time. This might be a little bit of a bold prediction, but I think Woody Marks is going to beat out Montgomery for RB1 and get more carries this year. I do expect that to be a split, like 60-40, one way or the other, but we'll see who gets the majority of the carries. I'm leaning towards Woody Marks being the better performer this year. Tank Dell, Jaden Higgins, and Dalton Schultz are all worth taking some shots on and or stacking with Stroud, assuming you can get good value on them. I wouldn't be reaching above ADP for any of these guys. Okay, next up we have the Colts. The Colts didn't add any new best ball pieces in the draft or in free agency. No need to spend too much time talking about them. I do love me some Jonathan Taylor. I love Alec Pierce. I love Tyler Warren. I like Danny Dimes a lot. This is an offense I want to stack those guys up in some drafts for sure. Not much difference to talk about here as compared to last year. We're just going to move right along. All right, and finishing last in the NFC South last year was the Tennessee Titans at 3-14. The Titans are another team ranked towards the bottom of the NFL as far as offensive line rating and did not do much in the draft to improve it. They didn't really do anything to fix it in free agency either. Carnell Tate and Wan'Dale Robinson look to help Cam Ward improve his numbers this year. But I think the poor offensive line really hurts the Titans again this year. Of course, if you think Cam Ward is ready to take the next step up and overcome some shortcomings on the line, there is a chance that he could be really good this year. I want to build some lineups with Cam as my quarterback 3. I might try to get him sometimes if I can get a deal ADP-wise, and I got Carnell Tate earlier. Wan'Dale Robinson looks to be the next guy if you're looking to build some small Titan stacks. Another deep sleeper who might be worth taking a few shots on in the 20th round in your best ball draft is Nick Singleton, who the Titans drafted in the 5th round. Singleton ran for 5.56 per carry last year at Penn State. He has big playability, and he finds himself in a thin running back room. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are running the show over there for now, but I think Singleton might earn himself some touches. He's definitely a one injury away kind of guy worth keeping your eye on. Next up is the NFC South. The Carolina Panthers won a division at 8-9 last year. No one in the division was above 500 at all. The Panthers, the Bucks, and the Falcons actually all finished at 8-9. The Panthers were the only ones that made the playoffs out of this weak division. And we are going to start with them first. The Panthers wanted to make sure they protect Bryce Young. They already had the 8th ranked O-line last year, and they doubled down on that, bringing in Monroe Freeling, the massive O-tackle from Georgia with the 19th pick in the 1st round. Chuba Hubbard is currently listed as their running back 1, but I have to assume that Jonathan Brooks will get the majority of carries this year. He was so highly touted before he suffered 2 separate ACL tears in his right knee within 13 months of each other. We'll see how he can bounce back from that. This is one of those situations where I wish I knew him personally. Is he going to play scared of getting hurt again? I mean, if you put yourself in this guy's position, he worked so hard for his whole life, and to get to this point, and injuries have kept him off of the field most of the time. This is one of those situations where I really wish I knew him personally. Is he going to play scared of getting hurt again? I mean, if you put yourself in this guy's position, he worked so hard for his whole life to get to this point. Injuries have kept him off of the field most of the time, suppressing his dream. If that's like living in his head, and he starts running too safe, he could be a total bust and not even worth drafting at all. However, if he can manage to play like his old self and keep those injury thoughts out of his mind, this guy could be special. I am worried about the injury thing, and I'm going to stay away from drafting him, but I am not going to be staying away from drafting him completely. The chance is just too high that this guy might go nuts. Chuba Hubbard is a safer pick, but also comes with a lower ceiling. Is this the year when Bryce Young takes a step up into best ball quarterback one territory? I suppose it's possible, but I am starting to think Young may never turn into the guy the Panthers hoped he would be when they took him with the first overall pick a few years ago. He is looking better, and I think he's worth taking some shots on as quarterback two on some best ball teams. As far as stacking with Young goes, Ted McMillan remains the best option here. In fact, Ted is probably my favorite best ball weapon on this current team. I won't be drafting Tommy Tremble or any Panthers tight end at all this year in best ball. We have the Tampa Bay Bucks, who also finished at 8-9 last year. The Bucks had the 26th rated offensive line last year, and they did not address it in free agency or the draft. That is going to hurt them. This hurts all Tampa Bay players as far as best ball is concerned. The only thing which kind of saves it is Baker Mayfield's ability to extend plays. The Bucks did bring in Kenneth Gainwell, and I do like him a little bit more in best ball than Bucky Irving. Bucky is a solid player too, but with that bad O-line hurting both of them, Gainwell is just a little bit better catching the ball out of the backfield, and that's why I like him a little bit more, especially in your full PPR formats. As far as stacking with Baker, Igbuka and McMillan are the best bets, although Tez Johnson and Ted Hurst, the rookie, both might be worth taking some shots on late as well. You can get some real good value there. All right, switching focus to the Atlanta Falcons, who also were 8-9. There's a common theme here in the NFC South. The Falcons didn't have a first-round pick. They took Avion Terrell, the corner out of Clemson, in the second round. Doesn't do anything for us in best ball. In the third round, Atlanta finally added a weapon, Zach Branch, the screen machine out of Georgia. In pre-draft best ball drafts, he was being drafted at 225 ADP. Now that he got drafted by Atlanta and their wide receiver room includes Drake London and little else, I expect Zachariah Branch to start raising up an ADP because I see this guy playing a lot out of the slot right away. They're going to run a lot of bubble screens and similar plays with him. I think he's going to get a lot of receptions. And a full point PPR reception scoring system like DraftKings, Branch looks to be a solid contributor. I like him less on underdog and anywhere with half PPR or no PPR. As for quarterback, the Falcons brought in Tua as a backup and maybe to compete with Michael Penix Jr. for the starting job. Penix's stats last year didn't blow you away in 9 games, but he threw for a serviceable 220 yards per game. And last year, he completed just over 60% of his passes, even though the Falcons leaned on Bijan and his rushing. In Tua's starts last year with the Dolphins, he averaged 190 yards per game, less than Penix at 220, but his completion percentage was higher at 67.7% compared to Penix and his 60.1%. At least right now, I don't see either guy as clear favorite to win the job, although right now, Penix is listed as quarterback 1 on their depth chart, and they did not give Tua a big contract. The edge seems to go to Penix at this point. Either guy should probably be only drafted as a quarterback 3 in best ball drafts right now. Besides their new rookie Branch, who I do think is worth taking more towards the middle of best ball drafts as compared to where he was going pre-draft, the Falcons are mostly bringing back the same weapons again. Drake London and Kyle Pitts remain the top 2 options in Atlanta, but Branch will be involved enough to be worth taking some shots on in best ball. I don't exactly love Zacchaeus or Dotson, but either guy may be worth taking a late round flyer on. They're both capable of a few spike weeks throughout the year. Build Atlanta stacks at your own risk. Okay, next up, last in the NFC South, we have the New Orleans Saints, who finished 6-11 last year. The Saints look like a team with a severely underrated offense to me. People are scared to draft the Saints because they have been down in the dumps for a while. The Saints had poor O-line play last year, ranking 28th. But they did bring in David Edwards, who played for the Bills previously on a 4-year, $61 million deal. Also, their lowest rated lineman from last year is no longer on the team. Look for their line to get slightly better. Likely still in the bottom half of the league, but probably closer to average than they were last year. Don't look now, but the Saints have some really exciting pieces for best ball. They took the most exciting wide receiver in the draft, Jordan Tyson, at 8 overall. When it comes to Tyson, the only question mark really is availability. availability. Can this guy stay healthy? He had numerous injuries stack up in college, and most of us are worried that will continue into his NFL career. Now, that's the one con. Let's talk about all the pros. The guy is an exciting playmaker. With a college highlight reel, you can match up against almost any other player ever. He got drafted by the Saints, who have Chris Olave and little else as far as receivers. And he's got a talented young quarterback throwing him the ball, and a lot of the field doesn't even know about him. Who's that? Tyler Shuck. This guy's so unknown, I'm not even positive how you pronounce the guy's last name yet. That's me saying that, and I'm a complete nerd about all of this. I never take time off. It's football season all year long for me. Now, let me tell you what I do know. I know the Saints like this kid a lot. He took over as the starter in Week 8 and struggled against the Bucs in his first ever start. It took him 3 or 4 games to get comfortable, but he looks composed. He had over 20 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games, and the other one was just under. He had over 300 yards passing in 2 of his last 3 games. He has yet to throw more than 1 interception in a game. There's actually a lot of viable best ball options from New Orleans, and the majority of them you should be able to get at decent value most of the time. I think it's definitely worth taking some shots. I think it's worth taking some shots, building some Shuck stacks. I still like Olave the most in a Saints stack. Tyson, Travis Etienne, and Jawan Johnson look like the best stacking partners otherwise. I will be taking a few shots on Kamara, even though he projects to see less touches. I'm sure he is still in store for a few nice weeks and can still contribute to your best ball team. I won't ever be reaching for him, but if I can get him at good value, that's more than fine with me. The Broncos didn't have a pick in the first or second round this year, but they still managed to walk away with a potential best ball breaking player when they took Jonah Coleman, the tank of a running back from Washington. Coleman is an awesome player. If you don't know about this guy, take a peek at his highlights from Washington. It's eye-popping. This guy can play, and he is going to be a factor in the NFL too. This might be bad news for either J.K. Dobbins or R.J. Harvey because Coleman is certainly going to poach carries from at least one of them. He's strong, he can block, he can catch, he's going to get on the field. Coleman has been being taken around 155 ADP in NFL pre-draft best ball drafts. If that stays the same or drops at all, I want me some Jonah Coleman in best ball this year. I was snatching him up in early drafts back in March and April, and I don't feel bad about it at all. Denver has a great O-line, and Coleman is going to stake his claim to the rock. I like Bo Nix too. I'm not going to go crazy drafting this guy, but in situations where I need a quarterback and I can get good value on him, I won't be upset about that at all. Well, assuming I already have at least one other quarterback on my team already, that is, all right? Sutton only averaged a little over 12 points a game last year on DraftKings. Not great, but he could be in for a bounce-back year. Waddle looks to be productive enough to take shots on. Maybe get him in some stacks with Bo Nix as well. Little Jordan Humphreys, not so little, is an additional deep sleeper to keep your eye on for Nick stacks, all right? If you can get him at the end of the draft, he's a big-body guy. He showed some flashes last year with Denver. Okay, next up we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who were 11-6 last year. So the Chargers are another team with a really bad offensive line, who did not do nearly enough to fix that. They brought in a few mid-tier guys in free agency, but considering they were ranked 30th in the league last year, I don't think it's nearly enough. I do not love drafting Herbert. Of course, I'm going to have exposure to every starting quarterback, but I just don't love Herbert, okay? I mean, he's not as mobile as you'd like him to be. I know he had his best rushing season last year, almost hitting 500 yards, but in all other seasons, he's right around a 300-yard guy, not enough to make a huge difference, okay? He does not have enough time in the pocket, and his receiving weapons suffer for it. When I do take him, I'll stack him up with Ladd McConkey more than anyone else, but Quentin Johnson could be a decent pick as well if you can get him at good value. O'Marion Hampton is such a talented running back. It's such a shame that they didn't build up that line a little bit more to help him out. He is going to be drafted way too high as compared to his production because of that poor offensive line. Gadsden, assuming he's tight end 1 over there, can catch the ball. I'm not targeting him so much, but he is the kind of guy who does nothing for a while, and then he has huge spike weeks every once in a while. So if you want to take this guy as your third or maybe fourth tight ends on some teams where you have 4 tight ends, go for it. I mean, he's probably not going to win you the league, but he's a solid player. All right, let's talk about the Chiefs, who had a little bit of a down year at 6-11. The Chiefs mostly focused on defense in this draft. It looks to me like they had a really good draft overall. However, they did not add many weapons to the offense in this draft. And we'll take a little peek at their depth chart here. Of course, they made a big splash in free agency. They gave Kenneth Walker a nice contract. I do expect Walker to be a top back, okay? Andy Reid, being the top-tier coach that he is going to change up this offense, run it through Walker, and still be very competitive. Mahomes is a solid quarterback, but he is no longer the league-winning guy he used to be. It's not his fault, really. The receiving weapons just aren't what they used to be there. All right, one more time. Riceworthy and Kelsey remain the best stacking options for Mahomes. I like Mahomes, but I'll probably end up with a little bit less of him than I planned because everyone loves to take him ahead of ADP, and I'm just not with that. I mean, I'll take someone a little bit of ADP at times if I feel like that's what the strategy calls for, but if you know for certain that a player's ADP is like 3 rounds from now, there's really no reason to take him. I mean, you could take a player who's going to benefit your team more and then still get Mahomes a couple rounds later. It seems like every single draft, this guy goes super early. You know, it's weird because he's not even a top quarterback in best ball. You know, at least with Josh Allen, who normally goes in the 3rd round, sometimes you get some bonehead who wants to take him in the 1st or 2nd round, and that's still crazy. But you know what? There's actually situations where you could build teams like that you can't build any other way. Now, with Mahomes going towards the middle, spend a high round pick on him, it's just a total waste of time. All right, whatever. Moving right along. All right, switching things to the Raiders, who finished 3-14 last year. The Raiders kicked off the NFL draft by taking Fernando Mendoza, first overall. No surprise there. We all knew that was what was going to happen. Considering Mendoza is not yet a known commodity in the NFL, let's first take a look through their depth chart and the weapons he will be working with before we decide how good Mendoza is going to be for best ball this year as a rookie. Okay. As for these running backs, I think adding Washington is going to be a really good thing for Ashton Jeanty. So this is my opinion of how things changed post-draft. I like Jeanty just a little bit more, and I like Mike Washington Jr. just a little bit less than I liked him before the draft. I really like Washington. I think he has a lot of potential. Any kind of injury to Jeanty and Washington becomes a real nice contributor. But in pre-draft best ball drafts, his ADP was around 145. I think most of us who were drafting him in that range pre-draft were thinking he was going to end up in a little bit of a better situation than this. I assume his ADP will be lower post-draft, but it's going to have to be a lot lower to convince me to get back on the Mike Washington train. I already have a decent amount of exposure to him pre-draft, so I'm just backing off for now. If you like Washington and you can get him towards the end of the draft in the last 2 or 3 rounds, he's probably worth taking some shots on. He's a really good player, and all he needs is a little opportunity. At the very least, I expect him to bring in Washington for a small amount of carries most games just to keep Jeanty fresher. At least as much as that might be possible. The Raiders had the 2nd worst graded offensive line in the NFL last year, and they didn't do much to improve it. If I have a problem with their draft, it's that. However, they did bring in Linderbaum, the center from the Ravens, and they brought in a guard from the 49ers. Linderbaum should be a nice boost, but the other guys they added seemed like nothing burgers to me. They might not be the 2nd worst anymore, but I still expect them to be ranked towards the back end of the league, and that's going to be really difficult for their weapons to contribute as much as we want them to in best ball. Now, in round 3, they took Trey Zune, the center from Texas A&M. I can't expect any kind of boost from a clear backup 3rd-round center. Okay. Wide receivers. They didn't get Mendoza any new weapons until the 6th round, taking Malik Benson out of NC State. Malik is a developmental guy, but he's a burner. He ran a 4.37 as a 6th-round guy. I'm not sure a roster spot is even guaranteed for him, especially not with the cast of pretty good young wide receivers they have out there in Vegas. Trey Tucker, who had that one huge game last year with 3 touchdowns, and Jalen Naylor should surely be their top 2 wide receivers, not counting tight ends, production-wise. Justin Shorter, who was on the Bills practice squad, is trying to make the team as well. I really like Shorter a few years ago out of Florida when he played with AR-15, Anthony Richardson. Brock Bowers should be the biggest winner production-wise by the addition of Mendoza. We can expect him to bounce back and return to his record-setting rookie season form. Circling back now. All right, let's circle back to Fernando Mendoza now that we talked about these other guys. He's got the prototype size and arm. He has some nice weapons, but I do not expect him to step in and be a top-tier guy right away. He's going to go through some rookie struggles. He's going to have some bad games. Don't put yourself in a position where your best ball team is going to have to rely on him most weeks. It seems to me like he is actually going to be the starter week 1, but who knows? It is possible that Cousins ends up starting the first 2 to 6 6 games of the season. And that will probably tank your teams if you're relying on Mendoza every week. He's absolutely worth taking as your third quarterback or your second quarterback in an emergency situation. After they added Mendoza, just about all of their Las Vegas weapons are slightly more valuable than they were last year. This includes Genty. Brock Bowers gets a massive boost, though. Tight end won by a mile? It's possible. Okay, now, switching our focus to the NFC West, which features the Super Bowl champions and 2 other 12-win regular season teams. Strong division, the NFC West. Now, the Seahawks managed to win 14 games during the regular season in the Super Bowl with a 17th rated offensive line. A strong defense and JSN seemed to be more than enough to compensate for that. They did not make any major moves in free agency or the draft to improve the line. They brought in a depth tackle in free agency and they drafted a guard in the 5th round, but that's about it. I don't love taking Darnold in best ball. He had 9 games last year during the regular season with under 17 fantasy points. He had 5 games last year during the regular season with under 10 fantasy points, and he only had 2 weeks last year that were even considered a semi-spike week where he barely crossed 30 points. Might take a few shots on him as the third quarterback on some teams where I drafted JSN. Not a whole lot. JSN remains a smash. I'm probably going to have a little bit of exposure to the 2 backs, Charbonnet and Price, the rookie, who I think I like maybe a little bit more than Charbonnet. Still up in the air, but it's very possible. Even though their offensive line is middle of the pack, their strong defense lends themselves to featuring the run game a lot more often than not. So therefore, I like the running weapons in Seattle for best ball. Okay, switching the focus to the Rams, who finished 12-5 last year. Maybe it will turn out to be smart years down the line, but at least for now, it looks like they wasted their first round pick, 13th overall, on a quarterback, even though Stafford led the NFL in the majority of important quarterback stats last year, and they are in win-now mode. Yet, for some reason, they drafted this quarterback for the future who may or may not pan out on their team, or who knows, maybe they'll get value for him in a trade or something. I don't see it. The Rams had the best-rated offensive line in the entire NFL last year. So literally all of their main weapons are viable for best ball this year. That's what happens when you stack that offensive line. Stafford, Kyren, Puka, Adams, they're all awesome picks. And they should probably be the main components to the majority of your Rams stacks. Corum, Parkinson, and Ferguson are all decent picks at the right price too for depth, or, to maybe work into a stack. But really, Stafford, Kyren, Puka, and Adams are the guys you really want to stack. Not all of them in every lineup, of course. Okay, next in the NFC West, we have the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers made a splash in free agency, signing Mike Williams to a 3-year, $42.4 million deal. I think Williams will be an upgrade for Purdy, who I already liked. Purdy is poised to have a career year this year. I want to set up some Purdy stacks for sure. I love the idea of stacking Mike Williams and Brock Purdy with or without McCaffrey. If I take CMC early, I'm probably going to try and get the other 2 if I can. 14th rated O-line last year. Not great, not horrible. George Kittle is coming back from an Achilles injury. They are hoping to have him back by week 1, but it's still up in the air at this point. He'll probably end up playing, even if not to start the season, and I think he will probably have a few really good weeks. The thing is, I am worried about his injury and how he will return from it. And someone else always takes him away way too early in every draft, ahead of ADP, before I get a chance to take him. I like Kittle. He's a really good player, but he is not someone I'm going to reach for in ADP, and because he is so commonly loved by other drafters in drafts, a lot of times he does go too high before he should go, and it's not even known if he's going to play or not. Now, if he does play, if he is healthy by week 1, maybe some of those people made a decent pick. But it's just, there's a lot up in the air at this point. Way too much is unknown with Kittle. I am not reaching for him. If anything, I'm waiting for him to drop a round or 2 past ADP before I even consider it, at least right now, before his health is a little bit more known. We have the Arizona Cardinals, who finished 3-14 last year. I mean, we're going to look at their depth chart. The Cards took Jeremiah Love 3rd overall. They took him even though they aren't in a position to win. Their offensive line is ranked towards the bottom of the league, and they did not do much to fix it in the draft or free agency. Love will probably score some points, okay? But now that he's on the Cardinals, I doubt it'll be worth taking him over the other options going near him in best ball drafts in the second round. I mean, they're just going to be sitting there looking way more appealing. No way am I taking Love over Saquon Barkley when I'm hoping that Love is going to turn into Saquon Barkley, and that's basically the best case scenario. I mean, he's not going to be much better than that if he is. I mean, there's a small chance he could be better than Barkley. What kind of chance are we talking here? Like a 0.05%? I mean, it's not very good. As for Brissett, I'm only taking him as my last quarterback in emergency situations. Okay? While I might be more likely to do that if I already drafted someone from the Cardinals to pair him with, I will not intentionally be building plan stacks with Brissett and the Cardinals at all, really. Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. are the more obvious wide receiver stacking partners with Brissett, and if you did want to go, if you did want to go that way and build yourself a Cardinals stack. Either one of them could be okay on their own if you get a good deal on them. Trey McBride is an absolute beast, and you don't even need me to tell you that. I expect him to be the best weapon on the Cardinals for best ball again this year. All right. Well, I hope I gave you guys a little bit of a more clear picture of what's going on in the NFL this year and how you should be drafting your best ball teams. If you found this information helpful or useful, or you just think I'm a jerk off, or whatever the case may be, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, check it out. I'm going to be putting out a lot more content, including a lot of, I'm going to be doing live drafts. I'm going to be streaming drafts. I'm going to be reacting to drafts. I'm going to be doing player rankings. I'm going to be doing all kinds of stuff. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Catch you later.